graduate from high school. Now, in North Reading, our graduation rate is higher than that. So, but we're looking at the entire state. Of those 8, 6 will enroll in college. And of those 6 that enroll in college, fewer than 4 will actually graduate. So when you start projecting that out and you start thinking about what is the economic and political reality of that over the long period on the economic stability and health of the Commonwealth, and you translate that out on a national level, you begin to see the scope of the problem. And so what I think out of all of this is that we're looking at it from the standpoint of one community, North Reading. Right? The governor and this Readiness Council is looking at it from how is this translated and scaled up to a state level, and what kinds of, if you go back prior to the implementation of education reform, the premise behind education reform in Massachusetts was that there was gross inequities in funding between community A and community B, which led to the Chapter 70 allocation. Now, yes, there have been increases in achievement as a result of education reform. You look at the percentage of students who are passing MCAS as a measure, as a benchmark. And I think the question here is this enough? Is this enough to prepare students in the Commonwealth to be successful in a job market, in life, as contributing members in society? And I think that's a question. And it's a question that we need to be asking here, even in North Reading. Not just the funding, but are we doing the right thing? Are we organized the right way? Are we providing the right kinds of skills and teaching for students on into the future?
You know, who could disagree with that statement? But if you read this chart incorrectly, you could read it to mean that only 3 or 4 kids out of 10 that start out as high school freshmen are successful or making a living.
That's the point I was making earlier. That's
yeah,
wrong. That's
and
totally
that's
wrong.
Some of these kids might have left their freshman year and gone off to a vocational school. Or some of them may have left and gone to a private school. Some of them that enrolled in college should have never gone off to a 4-year college. So they dropped out before they finished. So to me, the goal shouldn't be, let's get every kid so book smart that they can get into college and be successful, but rather do a better job of career counseling and directing kids into paths that they succeed in, because nothing's worse than being stuck in the wrong track and feeling defeated that you're not successful, when just a little detour to a 2-year college program, and that's why I like this idea, or to a vocational school, which still is absent in this plan, would have been the best track for some kids.
Find an occupation that you love, and you'll never work a day in your life.
Because you love it.
You know, the next page is the one that I was referring to, David. I jumped ahead of you. I'm sorry. We're looking at the lifetime earnings for each bachelor's degree recipient to high school to dropouts, $1.1 million, and $180,000 lifetime benefits to government for each high school graduate. And the cost, lifetime cost to government of each high school dropout is $275,000. Those are powerful numbers. The problem is that if we don't fund schools in North Reading next year, these numbers that we see here
Go up.
go the wrong way, because we're not contributing to them going the right way then. That's degrading our operation, which is a part of the total state. And it will happen not just in North Reading, but the 4,000 emails we've seen over the past week from the Association of School Committee
Right.
folks, you know, every community's got this problem.
Yeah.
Every community. We're all faced with the same thing.
I wanted to make one more comment. We have Deanna Castro here from North Reading United for Education. She wanted to ask a question or make a plan. I'm going to let her do that. I just wanted to expand on what Cliff said too about, you know, David, you mentioned the problems in the urban schools. Yet, what percentage of Chapter 70 money is already going to those school districts? You look at some 80–90% of their education budget is funded by Chapter 70 funds. So, if that's not the answer, there may be some answers here. But as Mr. Bauer said, I'd like to see some level of redistribution of some of those funds to make it more equitable. Deanna?
I just wanted to say that, you know, we, as an organization with North Reading United for Education and with Stand for Children, we're advocating, obviously, for more education funding. And I see this simply as a roadmap. The work's already been done. We can learn a lot from it. Most of what we're probably going to learn is the dialogue and perhaps the frustration that'll spur us all on to make sure we get more Chapter 70 funding first. Because the biggest problem that we all see is that we're not funding the basics and all the fundamentals before we've got these great ideals for the future, which is important to have, but we're not ready for it. And I guess the question I have for you as a school committee is, if there's 4,000 emails going around amongst each other, that's not productive. I guess the question is, where should they be going? Where can we channel that frustration and that energy to make it more productive, to push back on the governor to say, great program, we're not there yet. We need to have an interim discussion and alternative and solution before we get to that. So how can we work together with our organization, with these school committee members that are completely, obviously frustrated if they're spending time emailing each other? I mean, do we challenge the governor and the readiness people to come to a forum to have some kind of discussion? Is that the interim step?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's been a lot of push. We've been pushing the Mass Association of School Committees to put together forums in various districts involving the school committees. There's been some level of pushback to do that. There was also a suggestion maybe the day yesterday, maybe MASC sets up a committee made up of 12 school committee members from throughout the state that becomes an advisory board to this whole readiness project, or at least has some input and works with the governor and the committee. So there's been a lot from the school committee point of view. There's a lot of ideas, as well as a lot of hair pulling and things like that going on. But we are trying to push for some productive ways to have some input, I think. Wouldn't you say, from reading that?
Yeah, although I don't think that our input is wanted. The governor has held forums probably since the beginning of June in different communities in the evening, all across the Commonwealth. And they run for about an hour and a half. They've been typically 6 to 7:30-ish. And they were originally for school committee members and municipal leaders to get together and talk about the readiness project. But what I've gone to 2 of them, and what it turns into is citizens coming out on the common, like out in Salem and up in Tingsboro, and talking about their trash sticker fees and everything else. So there was no substantive discussion on the readiness project, but it was doomed to fail because of the audience. If you want some concrete discussion about education, first invite the superintendents. I mean, they're the experts in the field. And then invite the school committee members, because we've got a pulse on the community. And those 2 groups have been left out, or the forums have been invited to have not been conducive to real input. So more recently, in the month of August, the project was broken up into different components, and the different task force then held little input sessions. I actually found out about the 21st Century Skills one, not through MASC, but through a group called Care for Youth, who were rallying people to get out and speak on the health frameworks component. So there were a lot of people at that forum, but it was in the middle of the afternoon at the Children's Museum. And no one on any board knew about that. So it's been difficult at best to interject school committee opinion into the process. I would say, send the email to the governor or to the Commission on Education and get directly to them, because they have his ear more than we do right now on this project. Hopefully things will change, and we'll certainly push ourselves to get that change, but I think right now I would go up to that level and let them know that you want a forum to learn more about it, because there are some good pieces.
And just so you know, some of the other discussion going around the school committees, many school committee members, is discussion about question 1 on the ballot, and the problems that the legislature has basically put us, the problem that they've put us into, which is the after budget earmarks and all of this money going out to these cities and towns. And many school committee members are saying, as Mrs. Barker and I have been saying, we don't take it. There's a lot of towns that try to get money from the state to fix a school roof or to, turf fields, and those are things that we love, but we think you need to be able to fund those on your own, and we also think you need to be able to fund you have to fund the basic education first before you get a turf field, and the school committee members are trying to figure out how to get legislators to understand, yes, it's important for you to bring home the bacon to your district, but it's even more important to fund something like education fully, and Chapter 70 fully. So we're talking about that also, and trying to get, I don't think Brad Jones does a lot on the earmark front.
Brad didn't do any
Right.
earmarks that had a monetary
Right.
value to
Right.
them at all. And so there are some legislators that we can be grateful for, because when you make priority in education and you allow it to drain the funds off the top that it needs, then you won't have this money for special projects, but you might not get reelected.
Right.
And this is an election cycle, so what we saw was an unbelievable amount of earmarks, especially for people that are running again in their districts. Arlington funded most of their public safety. I was so surprised at the amount of earmarks that they got. Well over $2 million were listed today.
Right, and there are other things like Hopkinton getting money from the state to start planning a marathon museum, or money going to the NBA Hall of Fame in Springfield out of the state budget.
Yeah, the NBA.
Why is that happening?
So
It
it leaves
shouldn't
less
be.
money for education.
Right.
And so we're looking if we can be united and say to our representatives, stop this selfish, pulling of funds and leave it on the table for education.
But I think Mrs. Bach is right. The governor, the education commissioner, if you have a copy of the readiness report, there's a lot of names in the back of that. I think hitting a lot of those, obviously not all of them. I think there's like 200 or 300 people involved, but hitting some of the key people, I think right now is the best route to go.
Yeah.
Well, I do know that the most important thing that's happened productively is that in the last budget cycle, the adequacy study, which is part of the readiness project, was funded.
Right.
And what will happen eventually, as long as Stand for Children stays on top of our legislators to make sure that they actually do what they have said that they're going to do, is to finally find out what a 21st century education costs, because the formula that we've been using is 14 years old.
Right.
So, while it's a step in the right direction, until we actually get that information, it's frustrating.
School committee meetings, and that was one of our focuses, talking about getting that funded and hopefully carried out, so we can find out exactly what the 21st century education costs, not basing it on 1980
Right.
or early 1990 figures.
I think putting all this discussion is very helpful and productive, but my recommendation might be to take some of these original reports that were done, because a lot of thought went into them, and see how these reports and some of the questions that are raised here, how do we see that impacting our work and our schools in North Reading? For example, take a look at the high school report and see where we are and what does our future look like. Look at technology. Look at early childhood question. Take early childhood alone. We have invested a lot in terms of building a full-day kindergarten program, building our preschool programs. We're charging a tuition for that. The question is, where do we want to be 10 years from now?